Thank you. Well, it is once again great to be back in the People's Republic of Portland. And it's very exciting for me to hear that I'd gotten a job title change, that I work at the New York Times. Actually, we've been iced out of the New York Times for so long that maybe people just think by us talking about it, we must work there. But anyway, we were, as we were driving in today, we were coming down from Seattle. And so just a few hours ago, one of the people in the car, we were packed in, 5 of us in the car, asked, so, what's the deal with Portland? What's so special about this place? Because we were all sort of very enthusiastic and happy to be here. And so we started to explain a little. This is a town where if there's not more bicyclists than cars, there's more bicyclists with attitudes that they're bigger than cars. And that there are 2 kinds of vehicles here, those that run on decaf and those that run on CAF. I always remember when I came, one of the first times I came to Oregon was on assignment for Mother Jones a few years back, looking at actually the collapse of the school system. Oregon had become, this was not that long ago, kind of a symbol of what happens, how you can destroy one of the best school systems in the nation by simply removing all the taxes and watching all these systems implode. And, so I'm going around the state interviewing people and saying, well, how did this happen? I mean, Oregon is known as a, pretty progressive-minded state, and somebody corrected me. He said, no. Well, to understand Oregon, imagine Alabama plus Eugene and Portland stuck on in the middle. So that's always stuck in my mind. But anyway, we're now embarked on an, 30, 40, 50 city tour to begin talking about our 3rd book, Standing Up to the Madness. And we have come to Portland for each of our 2 previous books, The Exception to the Rulers in 2004, Static in 2006. And this is always one of my favorite stops. And it's in part, a big part, because of the vibrancy of the independent media that you have here. The fact that the Bagdad is always teeming with an audience that is interested and informed and eager to share their stories, hear some more stories from us, I think is a testament to what you have that unfortunately too many other communities don't have, which is that you in KBOO and your other independent media have this sanctuary for dissent. You have access to the other points of view, so that now when we hear the corporate media ramping up, beating the drums for war again, this time in Iran instead of Iraq, you know better. You're way ahead of the curve. You know you're being lied to, and that this is a new propaganda campaign. And that is so important in a community and so important to a democracy. Which leads me to the book we've just written. Standing Up to the Madness very much grows out of our travels over these last bunch of years with our other books, where every place we would go, people like you, in addition to coming up and we would sign books, we're always talking to people and we're hearing stories everywhere we go about communities, about resistance, about grassroots uprising. And some of the stories that struck us the most were the ones that came from the most improbable places and the most improbable people. And we finally decided we needed a book just to tell those stories. The subtitle of Standing Up to the Madness is Ordinary Heroes in Extraordinary Times. We begin the book like this. When fascism comes to America, it will be wrapped in the American flag. This prophetic warning, variously attributed to author Sinclair Lewis and Louisiana Governor Huey Long, could have been written about post-9/11 America. Using fear, electoral fraud, and the smokescreen of terrorist attacks, the Bush administration has given us a lesson in how quickly a nation can be hijacked and core tenets of democracy trampled. Who would have imagined that once sacred principles of liberty, the right to fair and timely trial, the checks and balances that keep our political leaders from being dictators, the freedom from arbitrary detention, the international prohibitions against torture and wars of aggression could be thrown on the scrap heap so quickly? President George W. Bush and Vice President Dick Cheney have asserted the president's right to wield virtually unchecked power. They have used the tragedy of 9/11 to implement a radical political agenda, attempting to ram through a right-wing wish list, from gutting Social Security to delivering tax cuts to the rich, to discarding basic civil liberties. Our government now routinely invades the privacy of its own citizens, then pulls the cloak of national security over its operations to hide its deceptions and blunders from public view. The economy has been trashed. Inequality is now at levels not seen since the Great Depression, and at least 5 million more Americans live in poverty than did at the start of the Bush presidency. Many eminent historians and economists are concluding that George W. Bush has earned the distinction of being the worst president ever. Where is the outrage? The U.S. corporate media and the Democrats complain politely and then resume their deferential posture to enable the next disaster. The media, so helpful in launching the Iraq War by acting as a conveyor belt for the Bush administration lies, has shifted targets and now passes along White House propaganda about Iran. But these things have not gone unchallenged. And I should add a little anecdote. As I was coming from the airport, arrived in Seattle on Friday, being a cheapskate that I am, I'm always looking to share rides in taxis. So at SeaTac, I run out and I see some guy about to step into a taxi, and I run over and yell, "You mind if I join you?" So I jump in, and he's a British guy. He just arrived here. So as we're chatting, obviously turns to, "What do you do?" And he says, "I work for a defense contractor." I said, "Oh, really?" He's from the UK, and he's got a British, thick British accent. He works in surveillance and spy equipment and this kind of stuff. So I said, "So what are you doing here?" And he says, "Well, I just came from a conference in Ottawa." I said, "Oh," he said, and anyway, then we get talking about what I do, and I said, "So were there many people to greet you there?" He says, "Oh yeah, a lot of protesters." I was silent. I said, "Like, what kind of things were they saying?" He says, "They're calling us merchants of death and things like that."